I turned it all off. I disabled everything and it felt like I was going pen and paper, turning off all the AI assistance tools. So if you're a student and you feel like you're way too reliant on it, try going an easy problem and seeing if you can just solve it yourself. And if you can't, maybe consider, turning it off for a while, getting your chops back.
Where, oh, where are you tonight? Why did you leave me in red on my phone? I searched the world over and thought I found true love. You met an AI and poof, you was gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to You Teach the Machines. I am Jeff Pennington, one of your hosts.
I'm MJ. I'm the other host. And Jack, that intro is AI generated. Fun fact.
Wow, is it really?
Yeah,
that's impressive.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's very good.
Dad wrote the lyrics and then told the AI to make it into a folk song.
I should post the prompts that I used. And I twiddled with some of the settings, really just like fumbling around experimentally just to get it kind of where I wanted. But it was a very like typical generative AI experience where it's like, you give it some stuff and it gives you something back. And then you're like, nah, what about this? And then it, tries again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But it was pretty wild. I played that for, I've mentioned this before. I played that for my friend and the musical producer for the other podcast, which shall not be named, Jay Nash, and he was like, "Okay, well, I'll just hang it up. That's it. Never mind." Because he's a singer songwriter, music producer, performer, all that stuff. And he was like, he couldn't believe.
Yeah, and if AI can do like jingle formulas,
couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, well, we're joined today by Jack, who just graduated from CalPoly. Tell us about what you majored in.
Absolutely. So I just graduated from CalPoly about a month ago with the degree in computer science. I didn't declare a concentration, but I did sort of tailor my classes towards machine learning and artificial intelligence. So I'm very happy to be here. And now I'm up in the Bay Area in San Francisco working at one of the FANG companies. So, nice. It's the perfect pipeline, right? The computer science degree to FANG. Yeah.
That's the dream.
There must have been like railroad tracks between CalPoly, San Luis Obispo, and the front door of your new employer.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Maybe a 10-minute walk to the station, but yeah, basically.
Nice. The goal of this is sort of, our theory is that the only people that are really just jumping right in and using AI in their everyday life are undergrad students, because we've lived through so many technological revolutions. A lot of us didn't even blink. And so we think it's interesting to talk to people about how they've incorporated it into their life, how it's affecting education, how it affected the end of your undergraduate experience. I don't know if you have ideas for how we can take that, but there's a lot of things to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I'll just point out, Jack, you're well aware of this. ChatGPT officially launched in November of 2022. So that was fall of your sophomore year?
Yep.
Right?
Yes, correct.
And kind of blew up in the spring. GPT-2 came out in 2019, GPT-3 2022, and GPT-3 is the one that OpenAI, Sam Altman pushed out to, so we all knew what we were facing. And that means that like about half your undergrad experience was pre-modern AI and half post. And something that we like to talk about, like what changed for you in that pre-post? Also, have you wrestled with any issues in your education and how you learn and what you learn because you have access to these new tools? I don't know. Have you listened to the podcast at all?
I have not, but I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. This is something that's definitely.
He doesn't need homework, dude. He's a computer science guy. He's got thoughts. Let's hear him.
Yeah, I'll just start off by saying I think I'm grateful to have had the experience where I think it was fall of my junior year that I actually started really adopting using these tools, and that everyone kind of around me did. But I'm grateful to have the experience of, 2-year, all of my education, but the 2 years in college without and the 2 years in college with it, because I got to see a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And the first major one was, since at least my sophomore year, I started TAing classes. And as I went on, I TA'd more and more classes and more undergrad students. And these classes were, intro to computer science classes, like entry-level Python or entry-level Java classes. And as time went on, I would just see the first-year students, generated code more and more, which was concerning. So we can get into that. Also, for me personally, I think that it was junior year. I had a bunch of really difficult classes. I was like, oh, this GPT-3 came out. It's an amazing tool. It has all this knowledge. And then you start to use it. And then you start to realize that I was starting to realize that for me personally, the more I used the tool, the worse I got at programming personally.
Yeah.
My productivity jumped tremendously, but my code quality decreased a lot. And my debugging time went up a lot. That's sort of changed now that these models have gotten better and better. It's also cool that because I was like computer science major, I was interested in this topic already, to see like for the last like 2 years or whatever, every couple months an update roll out or a new company come out with a new product that was like at the cutting edge. That was really cool.
So like of those new services that came out, what impressed you? What improvements in the models, the tools, what how they'd been trained? Like, could you give us a story or an anecdote of something that really grabbed you, like as an improvement?
Yeah, definitely. One of the recent ones was they started allowing you to actually run and execute code in the web browser, which was pretty insane.
So kind of like one was kind of like a Jupyter notebook, except it was the prompt.
Yeah, it was the prompt, and the one that
Copilot.
the one that really took me by surprise is the Copilot extension for VS Code.
Yeah.
You'd write like, the first word of a line. You'd write import, and then you'd write you start typing the first 3 letters of the library, and it would auto-fill the rest of the line, and then like the next 6 lines of what you needed to like get your boilerplate code in.
Right.
And that really blew my mind at first, and it worked surprisingly well.
I have a question about. So you said you saw the first years the intro to CS students start to lean on it more and more. When did you take algorithms and data structures?
Yeah, I took data structures, by the end of my first year. So spring of your freshman year, you take data structures. So I did not have any, at the time, there was no real AI tools when I took data structures. I took algorithms, I think spring of my second year. So that time there wasn't really any of those tools as well.
What's the convention at your school for how those classes are taken? Like, do you write code in those classes, or is it all pencil and paper, or is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely in between. So for each of those classes, there's 5 like major projects throughout the year, and those projects and the projects are like long 2-week programming assignments where you get a spec in the beginning of the 2 weeks, and by the end you have to have a fully working thing, and then they each build on each other. So you have 5 projects that go through, and they all get run through a sort of like auto grader test suite. And so that students like first introduction to integration testing and stuff. So it's a lot of writing code like outside of class, and then there's also the section of like typically there's 2 midterms and then a final. So there's the written portion as well.
That's how my data structures class was run too.
Yeah.
You can write projects and use like whatever debugging tools and stuff outside of class, but you got to really show your stuff on the exam because it's handwritten.
And I'm asking this is for the listeners. I'm asking this because these are some of the fundamental classes that put the science in computer science, where you study how computers can reason. But when you're talking about an algorithm, some of the most important algorithms that we use today were invented before there was enough computing power to run them. And data structures similarly is how computers hold data, manipulate it, and the theory of these algorithms and the theories of these data structures are where I've always been blown away that, wow, man, there were people who sat around and thought this stuff up on a chalkboard.
Yeah, right.
And when I took those classes, I felt like my mind was being stretched in many different directions and opened up. So when I ask about when you took those classes, you took them kind of before modern AI blew up. So how has it changed for the students you're TAing versus when you took those classes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's pretty dependent on the type of student. So I think there's like sort of two types of students in the way I see it. The first one, kind of as you mentioned, uses it as a tutor. And when you're learning some of these like core concepts in these classes, like you mentioned, like it kind of stretches your brain. When you're first learning like an algorithm, something like Dexter's algorithm, these things that really make you think. I remember I used to sit in office hours with my professor for like the entire duration. And I'd be there with 20 kids. We'd all be trying to get our questions in because you really are just like constantly asking questions for these difficult topics. So students who have access to like a chat-based tool like ChatGPT, it can be like an amazing tutor. You can constantly prompt it. It like remembers your conversation history. It also like can remember if you've been asked about a project related, it'll have that as well. So it can be a really good tool, and it can help a lot of the students like learn and do well. Or I think that other types of students can use it as a crutch and then not totally learn the concepts, right? So if a student has a big programming assignment that has a lot of the core concepts in it, and there's so many resources on data structures out on the internet that these models have become really good at, doing data science or data structures projects, that it could probably code the whole thing from the spec. But then that same student will show up to the exam, and when it's closed note, closed laptop, and it's a pen and paper exam, they'll perform poorly. So it's cool because we have, the professor I TA'd for developed this suite of auto testing. And so you can see like the performance disparities between some students who will get 100% on all the projects on like the first run of that auto grader, because we have it set up where it'll run like 8 times on the due date or something. And that same student who will take the midterm and get a very low score. So that's kind of like the two sides of like how it happens. But I like to stay hopeful, and I like to think that a lot of the students are using these generative AI tools in difficult classes like that to be a sort of personal tutor when the university resources like the TA, like myself, and the professor aren't available.
Yeah, we've talked about that concept a lot, like having faith that there will always be students who genuinely care about learning this stuff, and also there will always be students that are willing to cheat, and that existed before AI. Like that concept is not new. If you had internet resources that you could use. I mean, it's kind of a new concept in computer science in particular, because a project, you couldn't just Google the answer before, and now it's like you can use AI to generate an answer for you.
But you could, but
you could Google it.
You go through forums back in the not too distant past, and you'd see plenty of people who are clearly asking for help with their homework.
Yeah.
And
I think
answers that are super adaptable to types of questions they might ask in data structures.
Right, but I think the availability, like the barrier to entry to just ask it to do your homework for you, like that temptation, having that available to you, I think that leads to a lot more. Versus if you have to go, also if you're going through pages and pages of Stack Overflows trying to find an answer to your question, then I feel like you're actually learning it better as you're going through it than if you just ask chat to do your project, then copy and paste it into the VS Code.
Right. Well, when you give the spec as a prompt, then it generates that code. Yeah.
I have an anecdote about this, which is I volunteer at the local high school and go into their intro Python programming class. It's like a public school in Waterville. The teacher is the only computer science teacher there, so he doesn't have a lot of staff to support him. And he had me help go through and grade a bunch of this stuff because he was like, I'm pretty sure my kids are using AI on all of these projects, and I need like a second pair of eyes on it. And there's something about learning to program the first time where you can tell from coding style that you can like almost see a person's thought process in the way that they wrote the code, and you can see where there might be things that aren't totally efficient, but like the value in going through that process and thinking logically through what each line is doing. I mean, we've talked a lot about like, oh, what's the value in that sort of thinking if AI can do it and that can just be replaced in our society. But like, if you're ever going to succeed in this field, you need to learn how to think like that.
Why?
And it's tough.
Why, Mary Jane? Why do you need to learn to think like that?
There was an alumni panel. Sorry, this is kind of a side tangent, but when we were asking some CalPoly alum about their thoughts on AI, and what somebody said was, you could use a forklift in the gym to lift up heavy things, and that would lift the heavy thing just as easily. But the whole point of the exercise is that you are training your body to do it. And your brain is like, if you think of it like a muscle, if you're using AI to do all of the heavy lifting, then what are you going to do when you're asked to lift yourself? And also, the scary thing that they said was, think about how many people in the next 10 years coming out of undergrad are not going to be able to think for themselves. And he said, you want to be one of the people that can. You want to have been doing that heavy lifting.
So think for yourself. What do you mean by that? What do you think they meant by that?
I think that like there are parts of an undergraduate education that aren't just about the material that you're learning. And that argument comes in with the internet too, like, and calculators even. Like, why learn long division and multiplication if you could just use a calculator? Especially for me, because I went to a liberal arts school, a big part of what you get out of this education is not what specifically you learn, it's how it's learning how to learn and how to think. And that's like the value that you bring to the world. And if we have generations of people coming out of these undergraduate institutions who have just used AI to do heavy lifting for them and all of these, like, there's a reason that we've been learning all this stuff. You know, it's not just like so that you can code a blackjack game in your data structures class. And so that you learn those concepts, so that when you have to come up with new ideas and new innovative ways to tackle problems, you can think for yourself and you can accomplish those goals. And I don't trust that AI is going to be able to be as effective in applications as we think it is.
What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff very similar, and I partially agree. But with the lifting the heavy weights analogy, it's like, okay, if your job is to lift heavy weights, then your schooling is going to lift heavy weights. But it's like you're going to go to work and there's probably going to be a forklift there, right? Like you're going to be able to use these tools at work. But also, it's not a perfect analogy. I also think that I totally agree that you're talking about like all these people entering the workforce in the next couple of years who are using these tools. I think that generates this sort of knowledge gap that's getting bigger. Like the current engineers who have been in their role for however many years at these companies or wherever are like experts in whatever thing they develop or they design. And then you have a new grad come in, and you talked about in school, you're learning how to think, right? And you're learning the skill of knowledge transfer. So it's like you might learn in school how to design a blackjack game in your data structures class, but then you show up to work and you're like, okay, well now I need to figure out how to use those principles and now develop this other thing that has to do with data structures. That's where that knowledge gap shows. But then again, I get weird to say that because then you will probably have access to these tools that will help you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
what employer is going to say, oh, don't use a tool that's going to make you more efficient and more accurate?
Yeah, more productive.
I don't know.
The answer is none employers. Like the CEO of Shopify.
Like employers.
The CEO of Shopify 2 weeks ago said he's not going to approve an open position unless it can be demonstrated that AI can't do the job.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, and I think we have a bit of a stick up our butts talking about learning with AI because of the way that it functions in undergraduate education. Is like, oh, well, people are going to want someone who can think for themselves. Are they? I don't know. It's a scary thought. If AI makes you more efficient, then there's no professor being like, you cheated. Like, it's just about getting your work done quickly and accurately. I don't know.
The CSU system just announced a collaboration with ChatGPT or with OpenAI to bring like an education version of ChatGPT to over 400,000 students and employees of the CSU system. Like the biggest partnership that they've had so far.
What does that mean? What does the partnership look like?
It's like students and educators get access to, I don't know, OpenAI education, they're calling it. I'm not sure. It's some modified version of like these tools like ChatGPT and stuff.
ChatGPT gets access to all of the ideas of all of the CSU students.
Well, you kind of nailed it, MJ. I mean, so the free or cheap $20 a month, $5 a month access to these services that probably cost maybe 10 times that to run if you're really hammering it in electricity. In the entire time that I've been as a student and a professional, the education play of a business is if you can hook the students while they're in school, then they'll be lifelong customers. So, Apple, Microsoft, Google, they've all made it really easy for schools to license products and have sort of dedicated access and a educational price structure, that sort of thing. So I would imagine that OpenAI's deal with the UC system is similar to that, at least at the most basic level. But then, yeah, you're right. Like now you have their system basically going through a continuous learning process with those 400,000 students. And, I could throw a lot of hypotheticals around what could happen with that in terms of like de-skilling or sort of dumbing it down to some, median across all that usage. I'm actually, I think I'm going to say I'm not going to do that, but I think I just did actually. It's an interesting situation. Like, the Epic Corporation which I think a lot about because I work in healthcare, has its own LLMs that it in all likelihood developed in partnership with Microsoft, but we'll never know because Epic's a private corporation. And those LLMs are available for note summarization. So, clinical record summarization, and that starts to train, its end users to sort of depend on that technology for their workflow, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because clinical record summarization takes a lot of time, and it's a place where doctors expend a ton of cognitive effort, and the healthcare system is so fragmented that having a machine that can sort of be your agent to go get relevant pieces of information and pull them together for you as a clinician is a good thing. But it's interesting seeing this dynamic of, okay, now there's a vertical, and in business terms, a vertical is like education or healthcare or manufacturing. But seeing these companies sort of enter into these verticals and try and build a business is really interesting. But I want to come back to Jack. You made a very cogent point about you show up to work having learned to lift weights, expecting to lift weights, and you're presented with a forklift, and that we sort of to some extent we're worried about the people in your shoes, and Jack and Mary Jane, where you're coming out of school and are you going to be able to get a job, or is AI going to displace you? It's maybe it gets flipped a little bit, and because you know how to use AI and have been sort of adapting on the fly in a very organic way, and or in some of your classes your professors have been sort of figuring out curriculum that incorporates AI. Maybe you're going to put people like me out of a job.
Yeah, I think the whole opening phrase for the CSU OpenAI partnership, from the CSU's perspective, was preparing our students for an AI workplace, right? Their thought process, and I should probably read this more, but the general gist of it is you're gonna have, like you said, you're gonna have this tool at work. You need to be able to know how to use it, right, and leverage it to your advantage, or else you're gonna get left behind. Which is one of those things that I feel like it's. I hate when people get on LinkedIn and they basically have fear mongering into you, you need to know how to use AI, you're going to get left behind, you're going to lose your jobs. But I think there's also some truth to that knowing how to use the tools will definitely at least benefit you. But in the long run, you might have to know how to use those tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said for when you enter the workforce with a computer science education and you can use AI. It's not like we're at the point where somebody who's never done any sort of programming or computer science could step into that role and use AI to generate software effectively. And you still need to have some subject knowledge of whatever you're applying programming to. And so in that sense, AI can't just replace that role. And so if you're someone who has that knowledge and also is comfortable and competent with using AI to supplement that role, maybe to debug quicker, maybe to help generate, like you were saying, sort of the baseline code that you need when you're importing libraries. You're going to be more efficient than maybe someone who's never used AI. But at the same time, I still think that you're not completely replaceable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I saw such a dystopian video, and it was a skit, and someone was talking about how in 30 years, and it's oh, what do you do for a living? And it's oh, I'm an AI supervisor for the arts. And the other person's wow, I wish I could work in the arts. I'm an AI supervisor in education. And so their job is just to tend the AI and correct the little mistakes that it makes. But oh God, it freaked me out. I think I lay awake at night thinking about that.
Oh,
we're all going to be AI tenders in the next 20 years.
Don't do that. Don't lay awake thinking about that. Just get out there and do something, solve some new problems.
Yeah.
Jack, what outside of your CS classes, what's your experience been sort of pre-post, and what have you seen in terms of sort of the most helpful when it comes to an actual educational outcome, your brain got expanded, you learned some new theoretical or historical or style, or writing style, anything like that. How did your educational experience change outside of your CS classes?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I used it for, I guess in CS, but also outside of CS, just in general, from an education perspective, and in just a everyday, is it's amazing for like ideation on things. So if I'm working on a personal project or I'm working on a senior project or whatever it is, that's either academic or not, and you have some ideas floating around your head, but you don't know how to like put them down on paper, or you can't just start writing and you have like a perfect like project requirements. Using these AI tools to like help ideate with that, like, okay, I have these ideas, I don't know how to put them together, I want to do something in this sense. It is good at that. And it's really helpful, and it's an amazing tool for that.
Good at what? Like what's a specific outcome in that situation?
Let me think of an example. So we made this project a couple of years ago. I was junior year. We made this project. It was basically this team that had this product that created pseudo internships for students during the school year with like local businesses in SLO. And so we were in this class, this like entrepreneurship class, and we're like, okay, we want to do something with students. We don't know. We're like, you know, the job market right now for students, they can't find internships. So we had all these ideas, these problem statements, and we didn't know how to put it together. And if you just kind of feed into the AI, and I think we talked about this before we started recording, but you do this thing with AI where you just keep spitballing back and forth, and you kind of like use it to morph the solution you want. So it'll come back to you with like, oh, here's 3 ideas you want. Like, okay, actually, I like these top 2. I'll take these 2, and we'll play with those until you get what you want. That's been really helpful for like a project like that, which is like, you know, non-CS related, and other things. I'm trying to think of another example, but yeah, kind of like this ideation thing has been pretty helpful. That
interactive back and forth where, you know, because it maintains context, and because you can pick what you like and what you don't like and what it reflects back to you.
Yeah, it maintains context, but even on like a lower level, the whole like these machines are designed to be interacted with in like a human way, right? That they're like made to feel human, and they're made to respond in human ways. And obviously they're giving you out English text, so it's not spitting it like previously machine learning models, right? They'd give you a matrix, then you'd have to interpret it somehow or whatever. But because it's all language based, it feels very natural, which can be awesome and very helpful and intuitive, right?
The interaction.
Yeah.
To your point about English language, have you seen any students who didn't grow up speaking English? Have you seen anybody struggling with this? Because I mean, I actually don't know to what extent there are large language models that represent a large chunk of human knowledge that in a different language, right? And if English is your second language, and you take a response from a chatbot and, you know, paste that into your paper, but the chatbot is speaking in an unnatural way because it's not perfect, you might not pick up on that. That's something I'm really curious about. And we haven't spoken to any students who didn't grow up speaking English, but I wonder if there's like any sort of disparity or division there.
Yeah. I'm not too positive. I've seen a few students in my classes who I see them using ChatGPT in Chinese, like it's in Chinese characters, but I haven't asked them about that experience. It was interesting. Sometimes I had a local version of DeepSeek running, and sometimes with those models, right, they have this whole chain of thought reasoning, so it'll talk to itself. And when it was talking to itself, it would actually switch to Chinese, talk to itself, and then switch back to English to give me my final response, which I thought was really interesting. But I think it's because it's, you know, trained on a lot of content that's in Chinese. But that's a good point. I wonder if the accuracy of these models does more poorly in different languages.
I don't know if it could be poorly or not. You know, I don't know if it's poorly or not, but just since what you're doing is you're sort of, let's just say in this internship example, you're using it as a sounding board and you're using it to sort of interact and work out a problem statement and you know, sort of formalize the description of your solution. If you aren't as familiar with, you know, the native language of the LLM English, you know, how does that affect you as a user? So it's hard. I'm not expecting you to answer that question, but it's just something.
I think it has like pretty decent translation capabilities, obviously, because it has all of the internet. But from what Alexa's told me, at least, my roommate who's a French major, we talked a little bit about it, and she's not a native French speaker. She's like learned it through, and she's pretty close to fluent. Is that it just misses a lot of like sort of it doesn't sound as human, like talking about how, oh, it sounds like you're having a conversation with a human, like speaking to it in French. It doesn't know how to use like idioms or like sort of like conversational phrases as well. And when she uses it if she were to use it on generating French language, it's like grammatically correct, but it doesn't sound as like it can't do the stylistic things that it can do in English. Yeah.
Right.
But I think it would be interesting to talk to someone who English is not their first language.
One last question, Jack.
Yeah.
Since you just graduated, you said you have a new job. What did you experience that you can share with us? Because you're in Silicon Valley and everything's secret. But what did you experience in the interview process that you thought was, might be different than what you would have experienced 2 or 3 years ago? Like, were you asked specifically about use of AI? Were you asked to solve any problems using AI, that sort of thing, or was it more of a traditional process?
No, mine was very traditional. Like I was asked, technical questions, and I had to solve them in front of interviewers, but no use of AI, and they didn't inquire. Albeit I did interview, my interviews for this role was like over a year ago now, because I internshipped and then I just got the role from the internship. I didn't have to interview again. But my team was interviewing a new candidate, and it didn't seem like they had any questions that were asking people to leverage AI, but it did seem like they potentially had concerns about the use of AI with potential candidates. So like now that everything's online, right, and I've heard, this is not just on my team, this is a thing that I've heard in industry, where if you're asking a student who's on a Zoom or on a WebEx or on something to solve a technical question, you can't really know sometimes that they are using AI. And it's hard to test their actual knowledge.
Right.
But
I mean, it makes it sort of like extra open book in a way.
Right.
We've gone, Mary Jane, our episodes keep getting longer and longer.
I know. We keep coming up with more things to talk about.
Well, we'll let Jack just finish his workday. We'll let him get back to a relaxing evening.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. And I will listen to the episodes from now on. Now that
no, you don't have to.
Yeah. But just one last closing comment is that I feel like I expressed a lot of concerns in this episode, but it's very exciting, and I'm very intrigued with the technology, and I really have grown to become fond of it. It's an amazing tool, and I think that it's just like we have to navigate how to use the tool correctly for the future for all of us. But overall, I think it's an amazing tool, and it's definitely going to change the way we work.
Yeah.
And the way we do school. Right?
As much as I can sound like a crotchety conspiracy theory riddled old man, I'm actually an optimist about AI, and that's why we do this podcast. It's to have some more open and transparent discussions about pros, cons, increase awareness of the risks to how people learn, what people learn, figure out how to actually improve curriculum so that incorporating AI can actually, make 1 + 1 = 4 instead of just eroding how students learn.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
MJ, I think you share the same sort of like optimism, but right. Let's do this, but let's do it eyes wide open, and let's do it thoughtfully.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's just sort of all comes down to, do we trust everybody to be thoughtful about it and to do it eyes wide open?
No.
And to ask questions as we're using these tools, and the answer to that is maybe no. So that's where any of my pessimism comes from. It's not from the tool itself. It's from
your general misanthropic demeanor. Your lack of faith in humanity.
But on the other side, any of my optimism comes from a faith in humanity, a faith in curiosity, a faith in students to continue to feel passionate about taking control of their learning and not using it as a crutch. And so there's both sides to that coin.
Yeah, and I think educators really need to be thinking hard and working hard at how to modify curriculum. Like the computer science student in the local high school called you up and said, "Hey, can you work with me on this?" Right? And so
and then what we did was they went pen and paper.
Yep.
That's what we did. Yeah. And all the kids hated me for it, but I was like, guys, you're gonna thank me in a couple of years.
Yeah. One thing I did in my senior year, after like junior year, I really went all in on using the AI tools. My productivity went up, and then senior year, I turned it all off. I disabled everything and just like almost going pen and paper, but obviously I was still on my laptop. But it felt like I was going pen and paper, turning off all the AI assistance tools. So if you're a student and you feel like you're way too reliant on it, try like going to LeetCode, going an easy problem, and seeing if you can just solve it yourself. And if you can't, maybe consider, turning it off for a while, getting your chops back, and then using it when you need to.
Yeah, that's one of the
That's
questions that
good advice.
I've asked a few times is like, how has using it sort of prepared you to not have it available to you? Not that, I expect these things to get shut off or anything, but it's just I think you bring up a really important point, which is that kind of awareness in how these tools can and are impacting your educational outcomes, right? If you're just learning to prompt better, great. That's probably going to be a useful skill in the future, but technology dependence isn't just social media.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to play the outro and then we'll wrap it up.
There are ones and zeros, vectors and scalars. What do you see in that machine? I gave you my heart, my warmth, and Snapchat. You chose a robot, and now I'm alone.
MJ, I think actually the only reason you do this podcast is to listen to that little riff.
Can you tell that I'm bopping? Could you tell I was dancing while you were playing that?
It's a
I
toe tapping little
It always
ditty.
gets stuck in my head.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Jack, thanks for spending
All right.
thanks for spending your early evening with us, and wish you
Of
well.
course. Yeah,
So
of
good
course.
to hear
It was-
from you. What's your summer look like, dude? off?
Yeah, I get a few weeks to work remote, so I'll definitely
Oh.
be dedicating those.
You Teach the Machines is hosted and produced by me, Jeff Pennington, and co-hosted by my daughter, MJ. Look for my upcoming book, also called You Teach the Machines, due out in the summer of 2025. Please take a minute to review and subscribe to You Teach the Machines wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. Copyright 2025. Any and all use of the audio recording of You Teach the Machines for training or other contribution to artificial intelligence models or their application is expressly forbidden without the permission of the creator. And we'd love to give you permission, so long as you come on the show.
Poof, you was gone.